is Alejandra, and today I'm going to present you my infography about second language acquisition and versus foreign language acquisition. First, I want to start talking about what is language acquisition. Well, it is the process through which people learn a language, whether it is their native one or their native language or a foreign one. It can happen naturally, especially during high childhood or through intentional learning in a classroom or other formal setting. Talking about second language acquisition or SLA, it refers to learning a language in a context where it is spoken regularly, and it is common for people who live in a country where a different language is spoken from their native one. An example of SLA is when a Mexican family, for example, moves to the United States and the children learn English by attending a school. So while their parents practice at work or in a social setting. Talking about foreign language acquisition or FLA, it is or it involves learning a language in a setting where it is not spoken regularly. This typically occurs in an informal classroom where the language is learned as a subject rather than through everyday use. An example of FLA can be a student in Brazil learning German as a foreign language in a school. They study grammar and vocabulary in class, but they have few opportunities to speak or hear German outside the classroom. So it's difficult for them to practice the language. Now I'm going to talk to you about some key aspects that and some differences that second language and foreign language acquisition have. One of them is education, and in SLA often occurs in a naturalistic context, where the language is learned in a setting where it is widely spoken, such as in schools or daily life, where learners are immersed in the language, which helps them develop proficiency faster. FLA, in the other hand, usually happens in a classroom setting where the language is being learned and it is not spoken in the learner's everyday environment. Here, students may rely more on structured lessons and formal instructions to practice and learn. Moving to another aspect, we have culture. In SLA, culture exposure is often more is mm, typically surrounded by the target language culture. This immersion exposes them to cultural nonsense, body language, social norms, and context-specific expressions, which enriches their understanding of the language. But in the other hand, in FLA, cultural exposure is often limited to textbooks, media, or specific lessons, while learners may study the culture associated with the foreign language. Their experience is more abstract and may not include real life interactions because they are only learning this language in the classroom. Another important aspect here is motivation, because in SLA, motivation is often intrinsic because learners may need the language to communicate, to work, or to participate in the community around them, which leads them to a stronger desire to improve. But in FLA, motivation may be more extrinsic because it is driven by academic goals, travel plans, or professional requirements, and the lack of immediate necessity for the language can reduce the urgency to practice or to use them in daily life. Another very important aspect is age, because in SLA, children are generally better at acquiring a second language, especially if they are exposed at an early age. They can pick they can pick up sounds, grammar, and vocabulary more naturally than older people. So, however, older learners can also succeed because particularly they have some of them have a strong motivation, and this is a huge and important aspect. In the other hand, FLA have this difference because age may present more challenges since learners are typically older and may struggle with the pronunciation and grammar. They can struggle with learn and memorize. The structure often is it is often slower and can affect how quickly the learners acquire the language. And finally, we have practice. In SLA, practice happens naturally and frequently as the learner is surrounded by the language in real life context. But they might practice it at work, in social settings, and in public places, which is a real and a big difference between SLA and FLA because opportunities to practice in FLA are usually limited to the classroom or language labs, and the learners may not have as many chances to use the language in real life settings, making it harder to achieve fluency. Well, finally, in summary, second language acquisition tends to be more immersive and culturally rich, with learners more motivated due to the need to use the language in everyday life. In contrast to FLA, because it is more structured and formal, with learners potentially facing greater challenges in terms of motivation and real life experience and practice opportunities. That's it. Thank you very much for listening.